Bill. Mr. Curtin. Mr. Curtin, do you plan to offer your withdrawal?
I told you before, I stand by my resume. I have nothing else to add.
Do you plan to withdraw your name from consideration?
I stand by my resume. I'm here tonight. I'll be happy to talk to you later on.
At this time, I'd like to call on Mrs. Potter for a motion.
I move that the Board of Education go into executive session for the purpose of discussion of the appointment and contract for Terrence Carter, and the board invite into executive session its attorney, Saran Murray, Terrence Carter, and Dr. Steve Adamowski.
Will you answer any questions?
Will you tell us what the board discussed during the...
What's the outcome here?
Go in there and find out.
You said you would
We'd
talk to
like
us
to ask you
afterwards.
some questions.
Dr. Carter, is there anything you can say about your employment here with the school system?
All that I can say is that I'm not stepping down. I'm interested in the job.
You're going to pursue it.
So does the board still plan on hiring you?
You would have to ask them that.
For the parents who are watching, you're going to be their superintendent potentially. Do you have anything to say to those parents?
Not at this time.
But your client is not withdrawing his name from consideration?
He's not.
Obviously, your client was being a little tight-lipped in what was going on. What can you tell us and to the parents who are
I'm not in a
concerned?
position to be able to talk anything about what happens in the executive session.
Why did your client...
Do you know if your client is still a candidate?
My client continues to be looking for the job that he was offered and told he had in this city, yes.
And as far as there was obviously this question about his credentialing and whether or not there was some misinformation, can you speak anything to that?
My client stands by the application he made before this board.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. So let me make a motion. This is it. I move to defer action on Terrence Carter's appointment and contract until the board has had an independent investigation completed into the concerns that have been raised by Terrence Carter's background. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We go to public input.
I can't believe that this has come to the circus that it's become. When I was listening to the radio the other morning, the DJ said, the problem with New London is they seem to pick the most difficult path to get anywhere, whether it's a dog pound or picking a superintendent. This is absolutely ridiculous. To defer this and not vote this down and put an end to this tonight just prolongs the circus that's occurred in our community. It's a disservice to the taxpayers, to the parents of the children in the school system, to the staff in the school system, and to the children. We have a problem with character and integrity here. There are so many things that have occurred. Every day something else comes out about this. What's going to come out next? How much worse can this get? There's no way that this individual, with the cloud that's over this, will ever have the respect and the support of the community. The students, they can't respect him. Hey, lie about it, even if it's by omission. You're going to do an investigation. Who's going to do the investigation? You chose a search committee, and you didn't really get all the information. It dribs out later.
I think you should just reject this candidate outright. Don't pursue this any further. Don't prolong the agony. You people should do what you should have done from the very beginning. The search firm that you hired, they're worthless. This is really a mess, and the way this is played out tonight is disrespectful to all the people who came here. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and you're in executive session. Do you need lessons in how to run an executive session? I think this is terrible. just reject Mr. Carter and start looking again.
From the time that we heard about this article on Saturday, nothing was said. No one contacted the firm to verify any of the facts, to pretty much squash this. It was left festering for almost a week. So everyone's Google searching our own modern-day witch trial. So we found all the evidence that we could possibly find. So now, the candidate that we were told to believe in, you are now going to say, I'm not going to offer him the position. Okay, that's fine. Now you're asking us to accept not the top candidate for the job, you're asking us to go back and accept number 2.
It's very disheartening, and I am embarrassed and disgusted. The board, you have done yourself, each other, your position, the board, Mr. Carter, our children, the residents of New London, and our community a disservice. And I said that because we're talking about integrity. I draw a line. On one side is integrity. On one side is accountability. They go hand in hand. You cannot set a standard for someone that you cannot measure for yourself. Do not sit and point a finger at someone when you cannot measure yourself with the same integrity. Mr. Carter came here and presented himself. You had an obligation and a due diligence to research and to make sure that he was qualified before you hired him. If you did not do your job, how can you expect him to do his? If he met the qualifications, allow him the opportunity to do his job. And that's what you said he was capable of doing. There is such a bigger problem going on here. We have children that are failing. We have a public school system that is failing. We have a structure that needs to be rebuilt. Can we get focused? Can we stop with the shenanigans? Let's focus on what really is important, our children. We do not need to go another day. If there needs to be accountability, accept responsibility. If the council messed up, say it. If they didn't research, accept it. If we need to go back to Mr. Carter and apologize, do it. If he needs to apologize, accept it. If we can work with him, let's do it. If there's something that we can do to save it, let's move forward. But don't sit here and defame him and paint an uglier picture about New London than what has already been painted in the past.
I support the board in doing what it needs to do to ensure that it confirms only a candidate and a contract that it can stand behind fully and without reservation. Only after you get your degree can you call yourself a doctor. Those rules are clear. And so it remains confusing why Dr. Adamowski and the district have referred to the candidate in the press as doctor, while also saying that he's been clear about not having earned the degree yet, right? What this leaves open is confusion that either the candidate contributed to or simply did not challenge. And it's a problem either way, and it leaves New London vulnerable to public criticism. Okay, that's the candidate putting you at danger in advance of even beginning his time here. Second point, I know some people feel that the recent scrutiny of this particular candidate may have to do with race. I want to actually empathize with that perspective. Racial profiling is a real thing. It may be part of the reason why some folks are more interested in looking into one candidate than another. That's despicable behavior. Due diligence should be applied across the board to any candidate, period. That being said, what's been found in the recent few days about this particular candidate raises questions about his credentials, about his ethics, about his integrity, about his communication skills, which are an enormous part of the criteria that you all wrote together for a superintendent, and I read his application that the Day published that he sold himself as a candidate on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I guess you can see the bottom line here. The process, the qualifications, the questions of integrity, there's so much here on the table that we need to look at and think about seriously. You have an obligation. Number one, you have an obligation to the children of this city, and you have an obligation to our community. You need to make the decision to please vote no on this candidate. Select an interim person if that's the way you choose to go, but please move us forward and on from this. Put it behind us.
I've sat and listened carefully to comments that were made. Move forward. Let's look at the bottom line. But how do you get to the bottom line if you haven't looked at truth? Truth, according to Webster's dictionary, is some semblance of facts that we all have gathered and we all agree to that these things are real. I'm asking you tonight, do we as a community have the facts? I would love for us to take a minute to really look at the facts, to share the facts with the community as we see them, and not let this cloud of innuendos from everywhere cloud our judgment. Let's look at the facts, bring the facts to the community, and share it with us, and let us help you make a decision.
When I saw Mr. Carter, who I had no knowledge of other than the meet and greet at Ocean Beach, when I saw him foundering in the media, I called him and asked him if he would like to talk and if he needed any advice. And he said yes after a couple of days, and so I did come here with him tonight to just guide him through and to hopefully make him not look like he was a criminal before we have the facts. It is important here to separate fact, which is what was vetted by the search committee. We can debate whether you did a good job or a bad job, but this man factually has 2 master's degrees, a bachelor's degree, and a PhD that will be conferred on August 25th. You don't have to quote me, but no one has debated those facts. Those are his credentials as presented to the state of Connecticut and this board. Those are the facts. I dare say he might be one of the most educated people in this room. And so before we make jokes and we make light of this, we need to understand that we should deal with respect for the stellar work that he has been touted across this country for having done. That is why you offered him the job as superintendent of schools. He has moved here, he has paid money to invest in the community. Those are all facts. And so I'm not here to defend him. As I said, I don't know him. I know that when we're doing stories in journalism, the first Journalism Ethics 101 will tell you that a Google search, a third-party source, is not a fact. It's not enough to maybe have you sued, but it's not a fact. So as we are all reading the stories, myself included, trying to figure out what facts did this board have when they offered him the job, and how did they get so far astray from one story in a newspaper? How did everything fall apart? If I'm running this board, this is an extremely dysfunctional board, and I know that because I know I've watched how you worked. My first call is to my candidate, who I had so much faith in, to say, get over here. We want to discuss this story. What are the facts? This is what we have. I know from firsthand knowledge that he was told, don't worry about it, it's covered, we're confirming you, and he was not allowed to address the members of this board in response. Whatever decision you come to, you separate fact, as in vetted, substantiated, first party, first source facts from innuendo, and it's hard to be a journalist. No one likes us. Everyone says I didn't do it when they know they did it, but you still need facts to say that, and a board cannot be, I hope, that we're not hiring superintendents based on articles in a newspaper or social media or Facebook or anything else. I expect more, we deserve more, and you need to do more and really check yourselves and ask, who are you serving? Are you serving yourselves in your next election? Are you serving the children of New London, Connecticut?
On the issue of the superintendency, too much has come out this past week to simply dismiss as hearsay. At this point, even speaking with Mr. Carter, only going on his word, I cannot simply just go on his word. I would like to have an informal investigation. Accusations such as these are not to be taken lightly, and therefore it would be irresponsible to move forward with his contract at this point. We are stewards of the New London Public Schools, and at this point, the reputation of New London, the reputation of New London and surrounding communities, we need to all believe in the credibility of our leaders in our school district. I absolutely understand that there is more scrutiny because he is a black man. I also believe that what has been found requires a complete impartial investigation, and it's not something that we can decide here on our own as a board. My personal opinion.
I'd just like to say that just because it's on the internet or just because it's in a newspaper, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It also doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. To make a decision like this without being able to do complete research and really being able to back up exactly what our understandings are, it would be very irresponsible. I, speaking for the board, can say that we are very interested in doing what is best for the children of New London, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. Thank you.
I think we have to keep in mind that we are basing a decision of a man's integrity off of a newspaper article or three. And yes, there are substantiated concerns that we have to look into. I don't feel that we can make that decision tonight in good faith. We deserve the community, the community deserves, and so does Mr. Carter, an actual investigation to make sure that these are warranted allegations that are being brought upon him. So I think doing this investigation further and delaying this tonight is a good decision, I think, for the board to be doing.
I agree. I think with some of the allegations that have been made, very serious concerns have been brought to my attention and everybody's attention. And I think it's upon us to do further investigation, maybe a little deeper than has been done in the past, and wait for that report before we make a decision. And we look forward to having that done as soon as possible. We move to defer action on Terrence Carter's appointment and contract until the board has had an independent investigation completed into the concerns that have been raised about Terrence Carter's background. All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. All opposed? So carried. I move to adjourn.